Good morning. There is a question of erasing when it comes to erasing ink from one's skin. The Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos, Perik Yud Aleph Halacha Tes Zayin 11:16 records that skin is something which is fit for writing, and thus it would be subject to the prohibition of mochik if one erases from skin. Accordingly, washing of a temporary tattoo or a stamp from a museum or anything similar, which may be a frequent question, especially in these days of summer, the long Fridays, where one may go on a trip, one may go to an amusement park or a museum and end up with ink on their hands. Hopefully they come home and wash it off right away. But what happens if one forgets and leaves it on for Shabbos as well? So certainly one is not allowed to go ahead and just rub it off and wash it off on Shabbos intentionally, that with the intent to remove it from one's skin, that would absolutely be prohibited as in violation of mochik on Shabbos. But there are times that one still inevitably needs to wash their hands on Shabbos. For example, if one needs to wash their hands after using the bathroom, or if one needs to wash for netilas yadayim for Shabbos, for bread. So what should one do in that case? So in terms of netilas yadayim for bread, as a side note, the Chai Adam points that there's no problem regarding chatzitza, regarding it being an interruption of washing for bread, as long as it's not a tremendously thick or gooey ink on one's hands. If it's a basic basic ink on one's hands that is somewhat absorbed, then that is not a problem of chatzitza, but nonetheless, it still may present an issue of erasing. So therefore, what one is recommended to do is that if one is washing lightly for bread, and simply pouring the water over one's hands, they should be careful not to dry their hands rigorously. And as long as it is not inevitable that the ink will come off, it would be permitted because of the fact that it's not one's intention to remove the ink, and it's not inevitable that will happen. That would be what's called a davar she'eno miskaven, something which is not intended nor inevitable, and therefore would be permitted on Shabbos. However, as mentioned, one needs to be careful not to rigorously dry their hands because that will inevitably cause the ink to come off. And similarly, when it comes to washing after the bathroom using soap or the like, then if one has to be very cautious, because if doing so will cause inevitably that ink to come off, that can also be a problem of mochik. The alternative option that one has if one is stuck is to find a non-Jew in order to help them and can help pour the water over their hands. And because of the fact that even if it would be a psik reisha, even if it would be inevitable that the ink would come off, since it is a psik reisha together with what would be considered a grama, an indirect action, that would be permissible by means of a non-Jew. If one forgets on Erev Shabbos and one feels that inevitably washing one's hands will cause that ink to come off, and there's not a non-Jew available, nor is it comfortable to do so, then one would need to consult their authority in any particular case to see what exactly is the ink on, what exactly does the ink present, and what is the halachic problem involved, and therefore to try to figure out a possible solution. But the best solution, hands down, no pun intended, would be to be sure to make sure any ink, or at least any meaningful ink for sure, is rubbed off before Shabbos and washed off so that one does not enter into this question from the beginning. Have a great Shabbos.